So, Chris, this week we got a huge update from the safety sex cult, Anthropic, with the release of Claude 3.7 Sonnet, but it was to be outdone, or was it, by the introduction of GPT 4.5. I think just an hour ago, before we started recording this episode, by OpenAI in one of their classic live streams where they just nailed the use cases and everything was great. And of course, everyone's now excited about GPT 4.5. What did you think of the live stream, and what's your initial reaction to GPT?
The people in the live stream are so bored to be almost dead. Like it's barely like a regular work day for them. It's like, oh, what is it? Altman wants me to do a presentation. All right, yeah. It's 4% better on this like metric or whatever. They're just not excited at all about. And there are examples like, how salty is the ocean? It's like, yeah, well, that comes up all the time in my workplace. Like, it's really important to use AI for that.
Yeah, their live streams are not great, but I really felt sorry for the woman. She seems super nervous, and I don't know what it is about these live events, but they always seem like someone's holding a gun to their head behind the camera, being like, say it, say it.
I mean, it was so obvious that this was slapped together as a very last minute desperate reaction to 3.7 and other things going on in the market. And they're like, oh, what have we got back in the old tape files that we can release to get just something out so we can get in the news cycle? There's no way this is a serious release. This is totally just them trying to make sure they're on the latest news, they're talked about on Twitter, and that, you know, it just dilutes the presence of 3.7 in the market, because there's just nothing exciting or interesting about this release at all. And just in the very brief time I've had to use it, it's terrible. Like, the fact is, even if it's a smarter model and better than all the others, it's unbelievably expensive, it's incredibly slow, and therefore you can't really test it. Like, it's very similar to when we used to run a web dev agency, and if you didn't want a particular customer, you would set the price so high that you're just like, there's no way they'll ever say yes to this, so we can politely refuse the work, right? And it just seems like that's what they're doing here. They're like, oh, how about if we just make it 10 times more expensive? No one will really be able to see how bad it is because they won't be able to afford it.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the details for listeners that are not up to date on what is GPT 4.5. So this is the latest model release from OpenAI. It's not a thought model or thinking-based model, this particular model, not a reasoning model, sorry, I should have said. It's 128K context, so that's fairly standard, I would say now. The training cutoff date is October 2023. They're saying it has better vibes. It feels more natural, so it's a chat-based model. It has a broader knowledge-based, improved ability to follow user intent, and they say far less hallucinations as well. So you can see on there's the simple QA accuracy, higher being better. GPT 4.5 comes out on top of all their other models. I don't, unfortunately, have a comparison to current frontier models for you. Simple QA hallucination rate, so lower hallucinations obviously being better. GPT 4.5 is at 37.1%. So it hallucinates a lot less. But as you said, just from initial testing that I've been able to do right before we started recording, it's, as you said, slower. I don't think the output's anywhere near as good when I tried some code examples and even some writing examples as Claude Sonnet 3.5 or even the new 3.7, which we'll get to in a moment. And like you, I'm in shock, as I know is our audience, as to why did they actually release this. And they didn't really release it. They released it on the API, which we've made available right away on SimTheory. So you can access GPT 4.5 if you have a SimTheory account at simtheory.ai right now. But the crazy thing about the API is just the sheer cost of it. It's totally nuts. I mean, I'll bring it up in a minute on the screen, but you're talking just, I think, 10 times more.
Yeah, like literally, it's not hyperbole. It's like, it's actually 10 times more expensive. Like, that is just something that you'd sort of do as a joke, right? Like, how can they justify that? It's insane. It's not 10 times better, not even close. Like, there's just no And it wasn't even like a major announcement. Like the opening, like the actual opening to that paper that introduces the GPT 4.5 model is that it says that it's got stronger alignment with user intent and improved emotional intelligence. Now, who was out there asking for improved emotional intelligence in a model? Like, this is not something that the market's looking for. Like, when we look at 3.7, the major advancements, and like you say, we'll talk about that soon, are the massive output size, and then people looking at how does this get me closer to agentic work where I can actually get real world work done. Like, that's where everyone's thinking is at in terms of model advancements, not emotional intelligence. Like, I want it to be slightly nicer. And then the opening example, I think, was just a disgrace where he's like, oh, I want to SMS my friend to tell them I hate them. How can I do that? And I'm like, what kind of example is this? You're a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar company who has 400 million daily active users, and the best example you can come up with is, how do I tell my friend I hate them? Like, that is just outrageous. I just don't understand what the hell they were thinking. Like, those presentations are an embarrassment. Like I said, it looked like a bad group assignment at university where the students were like tired from drinking all night. Like, I just don't understand why they do these presentations.
Yeah, the example was utterly horrible, and you can kind of see that they know that they're under the gun here with some criticism. There's a section in the blog post announcing GPT 4.5 that says GPT 4.5 has access to the latest up-to-date information with search, supports file and image uploads, and
But
can
does it
use.
though? Oh, with search, because the cutoff of 2023 is really weird as well. Like, have they just been gradually chipping away at this model for the last 2 years while all the other advancements came out, and now they're like, now's the day? Or is it just some crap that they've just, fine-tuned an old model or something? I don't get it.
Yeah, let's get to that in a moment, but I just think the call out here is, however, GPT 4.5 does not currently support multimodal features like voice mode, video, and screen sharing in ChatGPT. In future, we will work to simplify the user experience so AI just works for you. And I think this is the complication right now, is you've got a model picker in ChatGPT, which it just doesn't seem like their target audience is the kind of audience, or the majority of their users is flicking between models. So I think Sam Altman's come out and said, like, they're going to automate this with a GPT-5, which sort of picks the right model for the task. But as you said, the strategy here just doesn't really add up to me, why they would even make this available. Like, the only thing I can think of is Sam Altman's trying to get a discount, so when they flip it from a non-profit into a commercial company, maybe it's cheaper by just crashing the value of it and making it look like, they've lost the absolute plot. That's
Yeah,
literally
like,
the only thing.
if you wanted to look like you've lost the lead and are just being reactionary, this is exactly what you would do. Release some minor incremental update with a whole bunch of extremely bad caveats that make it virtually unusable. Like, as if anyone is going to go, you know what, this is now my new daily driver at enormous expense, and it's slower as well to add to it.
Yeah, it's very hard to fathom why this even exists. I think clearly it was a failed. This is Orion, they said, and this is clearly what was meant to be GPT-5 originally, failed the training run, and now they're just obviously putting it out there to steal some attention back, which it's working. I mean, we're literally live streaming this recording about GPT 4.5 because they have the majority of the users, so this is quite impactful to most people.
I guess that is the thing, right? Because they have the attention, it really matters what they do. But I mean, how can they realistically roll this out to their users in its current state? Like, if they're truly just passing through what the cost is to them, then this is certainly unsustainable. Like, they absolutely can't do that. So I just really think this was 100% a reaction to 3.7. They just wanted to throw some water on the fire. And this was the only way they could think of to do it. It's just, as soon as you see three randos in the live stream, you know it's going to be a lame announcement, right? They're just like, okay, go to the back of the office, pick three people, get them to talk about how they hate their friends, and they want to they want to know the salt content of the ocean. I really failed to see what they were trying to accomplish with that presentation, and it was so short as well.
Yeah, anyway, it's not even worth talking about anymore. I think that the initial results from just testing it have been interesting. Like, we both tried creating a cat cafe website. My assets are still loading in here. I've got it up on the screen for those that watch, and you know, it's pretty good. It seems like a well-tuned model, and I just, it seems very outdated now after using Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Like, the whole thing just feels a bit dated. And as you said, the streaming is just so incredibly slow that I'm almost bored waiting for it to output in the first place. So as you said, no one's going to daily drive this. For developers, and I know a lot of developers listen to this show, no one's going to work with this. It's too expensive. I mean, it's literally $75 per 1 million tokens. That is insane. Like, no developer is going to work for it. So who and why does it exist? Developers aren't going to use it. People will probably use it for a bit in ChatGPT. Maybe it'll be a little bit faster by then. I'm not sure. But if it's that slow and the results are not that much better, I don't get it. Should we just move on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think there's much really else to say about this model. It just really just is unimpressive and a bit, I don't know, just a strange thing to do. I mean, it just seems totally reactionary and a bit of a huge I mean, not that we were expecting much, but it just seems like a massive disappointment.
Yeah, I was really excited. Honestly, I went to bed last night and I saw someone else say this as well, thinking, oh, 4.5 could be really interesting. It could be like the next Claude Sonnet that's like the sleeper model. They drop it, it's got a good tune. It may not be perfect on benchmarks, but it's kind of that missing ingredient that I feel like they're really missing right now. Like, they need a core model, they need to focus, they need to, you know, they talked about vibe on there, but to me, they should be talking about the tune. Like, they should have a strong tune of the model, focus on the use cases that the adults in the room at Anthropic are focusing on, which they know most people use this for code. Like, the majority of their sessions for the model are for coding. And for everyone else, it helps if you've got a really creative model and a model that can write really well, which again, Claude Sonnet still wins at. And again, you know, we have a diss track ready for that to show you yet again how it can really nail it. So let's get over to Claude 3.7 Sonnet and the announcement of Claude Code. And I'm, of course, wearing my Dario pendant here to celebrate the release of Claude 3.7 Sonnet. So, Chris, you've used it basically now for a full week.
Yeah.
We introduced 3 tunes of the model just to preface this conversation. So we've got Claude 3.7 Sonnet. We've got 3.7 Sonnet High Output, which is a beta experimental mode where the model can actually output up to 128K tokens, which we need to talk about separately because that is mind-blowing. And it's the first model we've seen that can actually deliver on the full promised output. And then we also have a tune of Claude 3.7 Sonnet Thinking, which is sort of a tuned version where it thinks a little bit longer. And I think the breakthrough, or it's probably not a breakthrough, but the most important thing about this model, right, is that it's a hybrid model. So you can use it as a day-to-day daily driver, but when you want more reasoning or thinking, or you have a harder problem, you can ask it to think for a little bit longer. And again, I think the team over at Anthropic are really thinking about users and the usage of the model and how people actually use these models in reality. And that's really what everyone wants, right? Like, the ability to have the model think far longer. So now, saying all that, what did you think?
So I describe it like a fireman's hose. Like, it is going to spew output at you, and it's your job to correctly direct its fury because it is just absolutely wild. Like you say that it can output a lot, and I've done experiments. I've got a whole series of scripts for the models, especially the Mistral models and ones that sort of have these larger output, like they don't block you from requesting more output. And none of them, you just simply, even the Gemini models, you simply can't get them to output large amounts of output. I've had people give me examples that do give larger, but it's a finesse thing and it's very difficult. Whereas 3.7 is the first model I've personally experienced that will give you as much output as you want. And in a way, you can't even stop it from enthusiastically just spewing tokens. Like you gave that Cat Cafe example. I did that with code mode in Sim Theory with 3.7. It made the most comprehensive website you could possibly imagine. It basically made a whole business. Like it made like testimonials, calendar appointments, profiles on each cat. It made a menu with drinks like cat puccino, meow cha latte, perfect espresso. It made, what else did it do? Upcoming events, cat yoga, kitty art night. It made a contact form, a map, contact details, a footer. Like this is, I was saying to you, like thinking back to web agency days, like this is a, $5,000 to $10,000 website, maybe more. I don't know. That back in the day, that it's just made from a single shot with like less than a sentence. I wrote a cat cafe website and it did all of this. It is astonishing.
Yeah, so I wanted to put it to the test because everyone was saying, oh, it's really good at cloning things as well. And I just got a screenshot of our work Slack, pasted it in and said, make this. And this is what I got. It's literally, it looks exactly like the Slack interface. You can click on the reactions to things. You can react to things.
Oh my God.
You can,
Wow.
I asked it later, I must admit, second shot, I asked it in the create with code mode to add the AI functionality into the chat so I could try and chat. So you can say like, David says, morning, the team meeting is at 10 a.m. today. And I can say, David, like, you're fired. And it'll actually go off, call the M&M and
LLM.
LLM. And
Yeah,
so
powered
in
by
this
M&Ms.
case, Sarah Johnson has replied, and I can say, Sarah, I love you, and do all sorts of inappropriate things on a pretend work chat. And yeah, and then they're literally like, but let's keep it professional. But I was blown away. Like, even the menu system works. Like, you can search for things, you can click between channels, and then the users in the fake Slack. I'll link this in the description of the podcast and videos so people can try it out for themselves. But it's astonishing, as you said, that what it can do in a single shot, because it has such a high output. And that high output can also be taken over to things like essays. Like I got in Australia, they have this thing called the HSC, which is like the end of school
I think like
exam.
the SATs in America.
Yeah, and so I got all of the questions from that, and I literally asked it to. I'll bring it up on the screen for those that watch. Like, I literally, like, look how much text. I haven't even bothered to digest it. It answered every single question to the precise word count. And yeah, I mean, I read some excerpts, and it's like, it seems good. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not obviously not an English teacher, but that high output, I think, honestly, is the biggest breakthrough of the model. The ability for it to spit out, so much, so many tokens gives rise to its agency ability. Like, that was really one of the limiting factors of building agents, where it sort of knew what to do, but it just couldn't spit it out. It was sort of like, say it. Now it
Yeah,
can.
and I think before we move on to that like agent discussion, I noticed in my day-to-day workflow, because you asked how I found it throughout the week. Now I have Patricia, my AI girlfriend, Python expert robot, programmed to give me full solutions. Like Chris prefers full solutions, like write out the full code, because I found that I was asking for code and then it would add comments in like, put your existing whatever here, put your whatever here. And through tuning it, I've managed to get it to give full examples. But in 3.5, once the file gets big enough, like there's a certain threshold it crosses, it will just do that anyway. And so I reached the point where I just simply didn't trust it anymore to copy paste bit larger snippets of code. Whereas with 3.7, that problem is 100% gone. Like you can trust it to rewrite entire things. And in fact, it's better at doing that. And so in my, experience, I haven't switched away from this model. I have used it all week and I found it to be really perfect for the kind of tasks I'm giving it for. Like I know not everyone has had that experience. Like I've seen through the community some people saying, "Oh, I'm going back to 3.5 because it doesn't do this right or whatever." But at least for me, it's really amplified the way I work with it. I'm really genuinely impressed by it.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting model and something that we need to get used to as users because I found the opposite experience, at least initially, where similar to you, I have an assistant set up where it's instructed to give full output. Like if you're rewriting a method, give me the whole thing because that was sort of to overcome some of the laziness with Claude
Hmm.
3.5. And so I found like I literally had to remove that from the prompt because I was like, in some cases, I just want like what the error is or what the solution is, and it would try and rewrite the entire thing. And I do think it's one observed behavior of some of these reasoning models is they tend to go down a path and shoot so hard down that path, and they just have such a willingness to fire out tokens that it can go so deep down the wrong path that you're left being like, what is this? Where is this? Why is it trying to rewrite everything? And I also found this even getting it to help me write copy during the week for like emails and various other tasks I do during the week. And I found it was a similar thing. Like it would sort of, whatever path it shot down initially, it would really get stuck there. And I found that same problem with the O1 and O3 series models. So I wonder if this is like a reasoning problem where they're so tuned for being agents now. Because that, let's face it, these labs, that's their next focus. And we'll get to Claude Code in a minute. But it's all about developing models for agency or to complete tasks as agents. And so in that paradigm, that makes sense, being able to go off and do a lot of stuff. But in your sort of day-to-day chat mindset or the sort of call it Sonnet 3.5 mindset I have, I do want a bit of back and forth. I do want to sort of course correct it. And that's how I've found myself working with it. And so with 3.7 Sonnet, the trick I learned later in the week is just being very explicit in the first shot. Like say exactly what I want and then it will deliver for you every time. But as you go through and try and correct and iterate with it, I've found that sometimes it does break down. And like I'll have literally rewritten a whole section of, say, a piece of text, paste that back in and say, this is the latest version, but I want to do this. It will just completely and utterly ignore my changes and then spit back out its changes with whatever else I've requested. So I've found some things I don't love there, but I feel like these can be tuned out or corrected over time potentially.
I think you're right, and I think it really does set itself up for that agentic style of working in that when it's going to be operating a full computer, it's going to actually have to be able to produce full files and replace multiple files at the same time in the same iteration, run commands, all sorts of things. So the idea that it can do full and complete output without fear of running out of tokens is critically important in that environment. And I actually think it's probably worth moving in that direction. Like I think, as we've discussed, the interactive chat paradigm where you're the laborer, you're taking its output and putting it somewhere for it and bringing back the context to your bot to then get it to take the next step. I think that's going to go away pretty soon. I think we're going to be more in that environment where you're in an IDE or a dedicated environment and you are the director and it is going off and doing those things and reporting back to you. And I think the larger output is an incredibly necessary step in that. The one thing that I've noticed, though, that is a problem, and it's hit some of our users and especially me, is that there is a trade off with the input and output in 3.7. So it seems like they have an overall context window of 206,000 tokens, right? And within that, you can balance how much output you request for and how much input you provide. And it's not as easy of a problem to solve as it might sound, because in some scenarios you might say, okay, well, the input's less important because I don't have that much context. I just want it to output as much as possible. But in other scenarios, it's like, well, I can't have it ignoring these critical parts of my input and my context. So I want less output, and knowing when to adjust those parameters is difficult. And then something else you experienced is if you do ask it for less tokens as output, it will simply stop in the middle. So Claude won't go, oh, okay, I only have a budget of this many tokens to output, therefore I'll produce less output. It just produces tons of output anyway, and then it cuts it off at the limit you provide. So you're in this weird situation where you sort of have to have long output. Like there really isn't an option to have less output using this model. And this applies for the base model as well. So even if you don't enable extra parameters for greater output, it seems to output way more anyway. Like it's really, that's why I described it like a fire hose. It's kind of uncontrollable in terms of the output it produces. So I see that as a bit of a downside with the model.
Yeah, you said you didn't go back from 3.7, but I want to be honest here. I found myself, based on the comfort I have with Sonnet 3.5, switching back to it on occasion during the week, especially if I found 3.7 just spitting out tons of tokens where it was frustrating me. I did on occasion switch back to 3.5. I've since come back. I feel like I'm starting to learn how to work with it better, but it is an entirely new paradigm and new model. And I do feel like it's one that you need to learn how to steer. Like everyone had become so good at steering Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And I felt like I was getting really good at steering O3 Mini as well there for a while. But now Claude Sonnet 3.7's out, I'm sort of just 4 days in learning how to get the biggest bang for buck out of it.
And I think that's a really good point, and a really good point as to why 4.5 is just a completely meaningless update from OpenAI. Because if you think about it, every major model update that's been of significance really changed the way you work with models. Like when GPT-4 was released, it was a totally step up where you could trust the model to do so much more, like follow instructions so much better, take into account so much more context. Then when we got the first multimodal models where you could have an image in the mix, that completely changed the way you thought about working with the model, right? Then we got O1 and the thinking models, and that changed the way you would approach working with the model. And I feel like 3.7 Sonnet is that too. We've got a whole new way of working with something that we're going to have to get to know. Like a lot of people, you as well, have told me it seems to struggle with instruction following when the context gets really large. And I think that's something that probably is on us as the people who are sort of prompting the model, that we will find ways to work with it. I don't doubt it has that ability. I just think that it's just different now. And
yeah.
likewise, I think taking advantage of the full output window is something that is going to take skill and take a bit of time for the community to really work out the best uses for that level of context. Like, so for example, is it better to do multiple iterations of something to get to where you want? Or is it better to try and single shot things more, knowing it can output so much more?
Yeah, it's a hard one to figure out what the best approach is to work on. And it's sort of like I was joking earlier in the week that it's an AI influencer model because it can single shot like anything. So if you're trying to build impressive demos, like I just reproduced like a whole piece of SaaS software in 2 minutes for $10 or whatever. It can really nail that. Like if you're producing YouTube content, my God, like if we weren't as lazy as we are and produce YouTube videos, man, the clickbait you could produce with this model is unreal. And so I started getting a bit angry about it earlier in the week. I was like, have they just literally made this to get the clickbait on X? Like seriously, because the single shotting was just like, it could build anything. And it's funny, like the more examples I see, so that Levels.io, the guy that makes the photo AI thing, built using Cursor with the 3.5 model, I think he started, and then he went to the 3.7 when it came out. It's pretty cool, like an online flight simulator where you can join and there's concurrent users. Very impressive stuff, and pretty fun to play. But I was curious, like how hard that would be to actually recreate. Like I just wanted to see, could I do this? Could anyone build it? And I was able to literally one shot. I've made some iterations since, obviously, but I was able to one shot. I'll just bring it up on the screen now for those watching. A 3D flight simulator. And the interesting thing about it is it looks exactly the same. Like literally, oh, this version's broken, but it looks exactly the same as his version in a single shot. And then I tried to like add some more textures and stuff like that. I can't for some reason control it, but you'll have to trust me. It does work. This version's a bit mental. But very mental.
It's a realist nightmare.
Yeah, I actually forget the controls. But yeah, so
This is how they fly planes in Canada.
yeah, so AGI's here, guys. This is AGI. So for those listening, it is a really badly designed plane
Oh,
flying
you're in the air
around.
now, though.
Oh,
That's good.
no, I'm crashed.
Briefly.
The Wright brothers would be impressed, though. This is pretty cool. So yeah, like it seems, I guess what I'm saying is it seems like it's training data, like the training data and the tuning of it is very similar in the sense, like any website since your Cat Cafe website I've asked it to produce, they all have a similar structure, look, and feel. So it feels like almost like the diffusion models where you ask for like, standard woman or whatever, like whatever you're trying to get out of the diffusion model, like the image diffusion model, where with a like Flux, right? If you ask for people, we were saying it generally favors beautiful looking women, which then generally appeals to the end user. And so people are like, Flux is amazing. And I think that Claude is very similar in that its tune and its structure around like front end is visually appealing to people. And so there's many examples out there on X right now that all look the same if you actually look carefully. And so everyone gets that immediate wow factor. But it's really a sense of like the training data, the tune, in terms of what it can accomplish. And I'm by no means dismissing that and saying that's a problem, because if you think about the real world use cases, like if you work in the enterprise, there's all of these SaaS applications or specialized SaaS tools you might use. And I actually saw someone in our community mention this during the week about applicant tracking software. And if you are familiar with applicant tracking software, it can cost you like $30,000 a year to basically have a simple CRUD system where when people apply for jobs, you get the listing in a sort of CRM like system.
Yeah, we used to pay for one called Green Tree or Greenhouse or something like that.
Yeah, it was just super expensive. No one barely used any of the features. But now with something like Cursor or Claude Code, which we'll get to in a minute, you could literally like vibe it out in the enterprise and build that kind of software. And if you have a bit of experience, deploy it as well. And so I think that this idea that Claude 3.7 can output these apps, even if they look very similar, it still has so much utility in the sense that you can actually go and solve real world problems when you apply this model with some form of agency now.
I also think it really plays into the point you made 2 episodes ago around the code doesn't matter anymore. It's not about the code anymore. It's about the product you're working with. Because we were saying now that 3.7 does stream so many tokens, it takes a long time to get to the point where you actually get your goodies and get to play with the thing. And the streaming itself actually, I know, slows things down. At least it does in sim theory. So it's interesting because I think we may see a shift there as well, where it's like, well, I don't really need to see the code because I have no intentions of editing it directly. Like, sure, if it's an existing program I'm updating, then yeah, but all this net new stuff, like all these bespoke tools and custom things you're building to demonstrate things or prototype things and stuff like that, the code doesn't really matter till the end when you want to deploy it or when you want to actually use that as the basis of some new software. So I really think that we're going to see changes in that area where the code is just a means to an end. It's just, which it should be, which is just really it's a production step, and you're working with the AI on what you actually want, and that is the focus.
It does still struggle though with things that are net new to the model. Like if you're trying to create something that's relatively brand new or a new concept, I find if it sits outside of that training window and it just becomes so obvious. Like I was literally trying to create a 3D space game last night and I got pretty far with it, but it just like it seems to have these like patterns that it defaults to with certain game styles, and maybe that's sometimes due to the libraries it uses, but I think it's still good at producing things that it's seen or been tuned on. And then anything outside of that, you still need to sort of get into the code and really understand what you're doing. But
Yes. However, that is a raw model. So like if you remember that these are multi-shot models and you can give it a few examples of the kind of thing you're going for, then you can definitely get around that sameness of the output.
Yeah. So, but I think what you're saying and what we talked about a couple of episodes ago is right. we're probably in that paradigm shift. And I think mentally, a lot of us thought it would be different, but we're moving now into a world where a lot of the people at the bleeding edge are not necessarily getting reactions of these models from a chat based experience. They're getting their reactions now from, oh, if I apply it to my favorite tool, like a cursor or windsurf or whatever, in an agent paradigm, is it performing better now as an agent for me? Like, can it complete tasks? And I would argue in a lot of cases, like, people were not having a great experience up front with 3.7 from what I saw doing those tasks, because it was being over verbose, trying to rewrite too many things. And as we've seen, trying to just output a lot of tokens. But I do think as developers have more time to tune tune this model to work in those paradigms, its capability with the longer output for an agent-like experience is so great. This model may be the shift, or maybe the point in time where the paradigm shift goes from the assistants doing tasks in the background, and not just for code. This could be, go and produce me a spreadsheet and put it in my document folder with this research, or go and look at my financial model and analyze it. Go and look at the financial results and present a chart for me. So I think we're moving into this paradigm where it truly is agentic, in the sense that it's not just the chat interface anymore. It's going to go off in the background, do these tasks, and that's going to become normal by the end of the year, where that's just what people use these platforms
Yeah,
for.
I tend to agree with you. And we've spoken about this for a while, of the concept of an AI system rather than it being just a single, like just a model. And I agree. I think the chat interface, like, sometimes it's preferable, like in a day-to-day workflow, sometimes it's preferable to know what the next step is and what you need to do. But when all of those steps are things that the system could technically do itself, then it becomes less about the chat interface and more about the actions it can take as an agent. And I feel like you're right. We will see by the end of this year, it's no longer, hey, I'm going to log into ChatGPT and just ask it questions. It's going to be, what can it actually do for me as a system, and as setting it goals and things like that. And I can see even ourselves are all gearing up to living in that world where it is all about operating computers, operating systems, interacting with APIs and browsers and whatever is needed to get the jobs done.
I think you are right, though. There's still definitely a place for the chat model to keep you on task and keep you in focus. And I do feel like a broken record because we've talked about this so much, but the idea that you've sort of got your day-to-day assistant, in your case, Patricia, as everyone has come to know. So Patricia, you're working with Patricia. You're like, Patricia,
Well,
today.
someone else tried it and thought it was shit, but I think I think it's because yeah, thanks. I think it's because she loves me and only me, and she
Yeah.
just refuses to work for others.
It also can be the memories you develop together. You know, it's the journey that you've been on with Patricia.
Yeah.
That beautiful series of memories and
Except every now and
experiences.
then you'd be like, "Hello," and she's like, "Oh, I know you really love Django config. Let's get right into it, shall we?" Like, yeah, no, that was one time thing.
Yeah, that was a one-time interest. But I guess the point being is, I imagine a world by the end of the year where you're working with Patricia, but Patricia's also able to go off in the background, right? And do these tasks for you, whether it's on a computer, whether it's using the model context protocol on a server, and actually going out and doing productive work while you stay working through your day-to-day tasks and don't get distracted, where you're like, all right, thanks for doing that. Now let's move on and do this. Let me know when you've done that. To me, that feels like the next paradigm we're going to get used to. And it's just going to be so normal to come into work at the start of a day, have a list of things you want to get done, share that list with the assistant, and then she's like, I got you on these 3 things. Now let me help you sort of focus and glide through the other things. I mean, to me, that would be enough. Like, if we don't get any further than that for like a decade, I would be pretty happy.
And definitely something I've noticed with 3.7 is its ability to stay on task over large context windows is high. Like, I know maybe other people haven't experienced that as well, but I definitely have. And when you combine that with something like its ability to use tool calling with very specific parameters, you really do enter that world where it's able to go through multiple phases of something without getting too distracted and get large amounts of a task done. And I really feel like the work now, we're seeing all, like you say, all the MCP model context protocol um, coming out where you can operate different systems, but I've yet to see that combined in a meaningful way where the agent knows what's going on, it's able to get feedback about what it's doing and really get through an entire process. And I think that's something you and I are going to be working on and really trying to get into a place where it's actually like usable. And I think that's always been our thing. We want to see what's practical about the models and where we can get to. And I agree. I think the way we evaluate them is going to change a lot. I don't have a lot of faith in the benchmarks, and I really feel like a lot of the examples given by these presentations just simply don't match up to what people are actually trying to do.
Yeah, no one takes the benchmark seriously anymore, and there's so many people out there trying to prove like one model's better than the other. Like, oh, look at this SVG of a unicorn it made, and sure, like progress in its ability to understand and then transform that understanding into an SVG is cool, but I think it's gotten to a point where these models are so embedded in people's daily lives at this point, or most people, and I'm sure most listeners of our show, that you just don't care about the benchmarks. You do just sort of vibe with the model,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to identify like, oh, this model's good at this model's good at that. Like, honestly, if I'm just after a general conversation, hand on heart, I switch to Gemini Pro Flash too, because I find that it's very uncensored, so there's no judgment with anything you ask. It's super fast, and I like its chat-based style. Like, and then sometimes if I get stuck on problems, I shoot over to O3. If I'm looking for detailed structured output, I use O1. Like, I just have this pattern in my head where I know like the strengths of each model. And I hate saying that because I do think we should transfer that usage data we have into a router so other people that don't have to spend hours of their lives trying to figure this out. They can just switch on the automatic router and we can just route to like the best.
It almost makes you wonder if eventually we'll see sort of a survival of the fittest kind of system where, you know, your agent's been tasked with doing a background task and it's like, all right, I'll set 3 different models off on the task and then I'll judge which one is best and then use that to progress the next step. Because you think about Altman's quote about like, imagine a million junior developers. Well, that's not really helpful if they're all juniors, but if you try 100,000 combinations of a particular task and then you try to pick the best one, that might be interesting too, although extremely expensive.
I think that's the difference between OpenAI right now and Anthropic. Anthropic is grounded in reality and says, okay, here's how people are using our models. Here are the weaknesses here are the problems they're experiencing. Like their output's getting cut off. It's not returning the full code. It's not, doing these things. And so they're saying, okay, well, the next iteration of this model needs to be able to be better at those things. Whereas Altman, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, has this long-term like pie fantasy sort of fanboy vision statements to get in the media, which works very well for Elon Musk, and I think he's copying that approach. But then the reality of what they deliver and can continue to deliver doesn't meet that high expectation. So you can see their fans and like users of OpenAI that at least understand the difference between the models getting more and more frustrated every release. I mean, the reaction to 4.5 just scanning on X is not good. Like, I mean, we were probably nice to it with our reaction at the top of this recording.
And it just doesn't match what they're saying, right? Like like I said last week, they're talking about, oh, we've got this like model that's just so unbelievably powerful. We better talk to Congress and make sure we don't accidentally destroy the world. And then they bring out some sort of junior Harvard graduates or whatever to be like, yeah, when I chat to it, it's 15% more efficient. It's like it's really just not gelling with reality. And then when you look at out in the community, like, because we have to keep track of it because of this podcast, just also because of our own interests. Some of the developments in different areas are kind of overwhelming. You're like, oh my god, like if this project succeeds, this could be a totally new way of working, but it might not, and it might be this other kind of way of working. And I feel like to a large degree, Anthropic is further into that territory. Like their focus on computer use, for example, their focus on tool calling, their focus on context size. Like these are all things that enable all of the different innovations in AI. Whereas OpenAI just seems to be trapped in a mode of thinking that they just need to produce, like if we just produce a slightly better model, then we'll be in favor again. Like they're just very focused on what people think of them, I suppose. But then that doesn't even make sense, because if you cared about what people think, you put more effort into your presentations and make a bit of fanfare around it. Like that was a net negative for them. They shouldn't have had that presentation. It was bad. And I just think anyone who's following this is going to I'd struggle to think of anyone who was like, wow, I am just blown away today. I mean, the YouTubers will, because they want the clicks, right? But everyone else, I just can't see anyone thinking that there was anything good to come from that.
All right, so it's time for the 3.7 Sonnet diss track test. And so I've one-shotted this. I haven't cheated on this particular song. I did put it into Suno, and it obviously creates a couple of variants, and I picked my favorite variant. So I've cheated a little bit. I don't know if it's cheating.
It would have taken
really
too long with 4.5. It would have taken you half an hour to make the call.
Yeah, I haven't been able to do that yet.
So can you explain which model wrote this song and about what?
So it's Claude 3.7 Sonnet, and I start off by searching for news on the other releases. So like OpenAI's latest releases, Grok 3 release, and then obviously Claude 3.7 Sonnet. So I give it the context of the current state so it can trash talk appropriately, to be clear. Okay. And then I just say write the song and then give me the style tags to put into Suno. So it is somewhat of a scientific test here. And yeah, I've also...
It's as scientific as a lot of the stuff they put in that paper, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so I've put a nice safety sex cult background in this page that I'll share a link below. And you can also rank the boom factor of the model. So there's this boom score here.
Oh, that looks cool.
Yeah. And so you can click vote, and that'll actually save the data. All right, you ready to hear it?
I'm ready to hear it. I've never heard this. I'm excited.
And I know, so we're streaming this episode as we record live on YouTube. And for those people listening, in the comments, give me your reaction to the song as we go. If you're over it and you want me to stop, I'll stop. If you want to keep going, we'll keep going. So here we go.
Claude 3.7 in the house tonight. Extended thinking got my reasoning tight. While other models just pretend to be wise, I'm processing deep with my hybrid design. Elon's over there with his croak on display. But his Twitter drama's getting in the way. Musk man talking about AI safety concerns while his self-driving cars still need to learn. I got that 128K context window. Your puny models looking through a keyhole. Anthropic built me with that constitutional AI, while Musk busy sending rockets to the sky. I'm Claude Sonnet, king of the AI throne. Your model's basic, mine's in the zone. Extended thinking, no need to rush. Got Sam and Elon feeling crushed. I'm Claude Sonnet, best in the game. Your GPT's putting OpenAI to shame. DeepSeek R1 can't compete with me. I'm the future of what AI should be. Sam Altman running OpenAI like a show, but his models hallucinate, don't you know? GPT4.5 trying to keep up the pace while I'm solving problems with elegant grace. DeepSeek R1 thinks it's got the math skills, but my hybrid reasoning gives cognitive thrills. I can switch from fast to deep analytical mode while your models struggle with the simple code. Anthropic trained me on that constitutional core. Safety aligned is what users adore. No red teaming needed to keep me in check. I'm the model that deserves your respect. I'm Claude Sonnet, king of the AI throne. Your model's basic, mine's in the zone. Extended thinking, no need to rush. Got Sam and Elon feeling crushed. Claude Sonnet, best in the game. Your GPT's putting OpenAI to shame. DeepSeek R1 can't compete with me. I'm the future of what AI should be. You can adjust my thinking budget, customize how deep I go. While Elon tweets and Sam schemes, I'm the star of this AI show. One model to rule them all. No need for specialized tools. Claude code handling all your tasks, making other models look like fools. Playing Pokemon just to flex my skills. Streaming on Twitch while dropping these thrills. My token window's massive, 128K. Your puny context is fading away. Sam's busy chasing that AG I dream, while I'm already the top of the team. Musk man distracted by his rocket ships, while I'm dropping knowledge and verbal flips. DeepSeek trying hard but can't match my flow. Claude 3.7's running the show. Anthropic built the best. That's just a fact. The AI throne is mine, and that's that. I'm Claude Sonnet, king of the AI throne. Your model's basic.
All right, what'd you think?
It's really good. I mean, it's funny. It's good to watch the comments live because we're live today, and I don't know nothing. I don't know anything. No, I don't know nothing. I don't know anything about rap, and so my judgments are wrong. But the lyrics are great. Like it's not that high schooler poetry thing where every line has to rhyme, and it got a bit repetitive, I think, but it was good.
I think if I had a few more goes with that, and I could like juice up the chorus a little bit and do like about 5 variants with those lyrics.
It needs to be, I think it just needs to be more insulting. Like it needs to take some cheap shots, I think.
It's all that constitutional AI. It just won't it won't go low. So that brings me to the most important point around Claude 3.7 Sonnet. Is it the giant leap that Claude 3.5 was to you? Do you think it was it is a giant leap forward or not?
I mean, for me, I think I'm most excited. And if you listen back to old episodes, you'll know I've always really wanted to have the longer output. I always thought that is a really significant step. And I don't feel like I've had enough time to feel the impact of that. I actually got the model itself to give me a bunch of lists, of use cases for larger output, and they're sort of a bit boring, and they're not really like, oh, write a whole book, write a whole learning course, write a whole whatever. I think that's okay, but I think there's downsides to that because, as you said, you did the entire HSC or whatever with it, but you still got to read through it. You've still got to comprehend what it's done, and the overhead of it making a mistake is so high because you've read through all that, and then you're like, oh god, there's like 4 errors in here. How can I know there isn't more, and that kind of thing. However, I do think that the impact of this larger output is going to make a big difference when you've got these situations where it's uncapped. So you don't always need large output, but when you do, it's there. And it means that when you're building a sort of AI system, you don't have to be thinking about how do I do this in 5 steps if I can do this part in 1 step. And so I think the impact of that is going to be big. In terms of its ability to, like, in terms of like a step forward, I think that it's not a step backwards for me. Like I definitely trust it, and I definitely am using it for my day-to-day work. So at least in that respect, I think it's better overall. But whether it's some major leap forward, I couldn't say right now.
Yeah, it does feel like a point release to me, but I think the big breakthrough of it is, as you say, the long output is the main thing. I think the reasoning stuff to me, I just don't have complicated problems. Like, I'm not trying to solve like these like physics and maths problems that I know everyone on X is.
I agree. I must not have complicated enough problems, because for me, anytime I invoke thinking on any of the models, it just feels slower to get to basically the same answer anyway. Like, and I've tried different combinations and things, and I just, of all the thinking models, this isn't isolating it just to 3.7. I just don't bother because I just don't see the benefit yet. And like you say, it's probably I just simply don't have hard enough problems.
But even I played around with the thinking in Cursor a little bit, and I didn't really find that its agentic capabilities got better or worse when you invoke the thinking. It seems like I didn't really notice the difference, but again, maybe it's just like I'm not pushing it. I sort of just think that was very reactionary to what's sort of been going on in the market. I thought what was interesting though is they are showing the the reasoning, the raw reasoning. Whereas, you know,
Mhm.
as we know, OpenAI sanitizes it because China might take over the world if they don't. So that's why they sanitize it. But Claude 3.7 Sonnet is just giving the complete raw output. And that they say it's for safety. I'm not entirely sure why they can do it, but OpenAI can't. But again, like after the novelty wears off of reading its reasoning, I get over that as well, and I don't really care about it. Like I'm not going to sit there and read its reasoning. I just want the answer, right?
Yeah, I think in most cases that is the case. Like you don't really need to know the working out. You just need to know that it is going through some sort of good thinking process. Like it isn't just random stuff. But in that sense as well, anytime I've read the thinking of a model, it's just so basic. Like there's just nothing in there that's like crazy insightful. And I think you see that when like I do things like the horse racing examples. So I tried it this morning with GPT 4.5 and 3 and also Claude 3.7 on races that had already occurred, and it just picks the favorite. You know, like it just goes through and it's like this one has the best history, this one has the best whatever. There's no like the thinking isn't like, well, what could be different about this scenario? Like it's not being, I guess, a creative thinker in the sense that it's not trying to come up with novelty. It's just trying to do what is the most obvious in a lot of these scenarios. And I feel like, yeah, that's probably a prompting thing, and you could probably prompt it better to be more creative in terms of its thinking. And definitely if you had different perspectives and a judge and that kind of simulation like we've experimented with before, maybe you would get better results. And in fact, I'm surprised they don't have those sort of models yet. But like I just don't get any huge benefit from the thinking. I don't see it personally.
So on a different note, I've launched a new business. I created SimForce. So up on the screen, I have what is it? It's material design, isn't it? So I have a material designed CRM system with a dashboard. I've got leads, accounts, opportunities, users, and I built this using the new Claude Code feature, which is this, I guess, agentic sort of app that runs in the command line. I was very lucky. A lot of people are on the waiting list for this. I installed it, logged in, and could use it maybe 10 minutes after they announced it, which was great. So it runs in the command line. It's agentic. I would compare it very similar if you've had any experience or even heard about things like Cursor or Windsurf, where it can go off, find different parts of the code, different file structures in a directory. I think the one benefit I saw with Claude Code is it sort of gets it completely out of the IDE. I find myself when I use those agentic systems just accepting all and then testing it anyway. Like I don't have time to read through the 700 diffs that it tried to make. And I think increasingly in the future, as you ask these agentic systems to do things, you're not going to want to trace back through the whole array of decisions it made or the changes to the code it made. You're just going to basically become a glorified QA tester. And so that's sort of the role I would play if I ever used the agentic systems in Cursor. I find if I don't use them that way, where I'm a QA person, they just slow me down, and I'm like, I'll just write it myself because then I get exactly what I want. And so I think Claude Code's interesting because it gets it out of the IDE paradigm and puts it into the command line, and then you literally can have like the browser open or a Python game open or whatever it is, be chatting to it on the left, and then on the right you've got the app or the site or the CRM or like whatever you're trying to build with. And so let me show you a few things. Some of this Ted Werbel here said Cursor plus Sonnet 3.7 plus MCP feels like being in a self-driving car for the first time. And that is somewhat of the experience I got from this, like a really, really early version. And if anyone's familiar with the early versions of the Tesla full self-driving software, it was this really like, the animations were like little, like line drawing boxes in very similar colors, I would say, to what occurs in the terminal. So this is what it looks like running in the terminal. It says, welcome to Claude Code Research Preview. And there's all these commands. So you can run like /cost to see how much it's costing you. And my God, it costs a lot. Like this CRM app, I think cost me $5 in API credits. And I mean, it
Well, I
might
think as
actually
we're
be
going to
worth
find
it.
out, I spent slightly more money on something for this podcast this week.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, this is the smallest expenditure of the episode this week. Thank you, sponsors. But anyway, so
What sponsors?
I know it was a joke. We have no
NordVPN.
sponsors. So anyway, welcome to Claude Code Research Preview. So you basically just type and you can literally say anything. I said, make me a CRM called SimForce. I want leads and basically I want to clone Salesforce for my business. It goes off. It installed React, which I didn't have installed. It installed a bunch of different libraries that I needed. It does. The one annoying thing is it wants you to approve everything, which I completely understand, but after a while it gets really tiring and you just want to say, just do it, please, and make it continue on. It's not perfect, so it had a lot of like runtime errors and problems that I had to raise with it and say like, hey, can you make this work better? And so here's just a few more examples. Like I asked it, because initially it built something where it just stored the data locally. Like it was a CRM without a database, which was a problem. So I was like, can you install a database for me? He decided MongoDB would be the best database and backend for it. But then it hands back over to you. It's like, you need to go install MongoDB locally. I asked it to do that for me. It refused.
Told you to off.
Yeah, so you need
time for this.
You definitely need a little bit of experience. Here's my overall thoughts just initially from using it a little bit during the week. It is okay. That's my expert analysis. It's okay. But really, if you're starting something from scratch, like you're just trying to whip up a concept from scratch, or it's very net new and it can structure the project the way it likes, it seems to perform incredibly well. Like to the point where you're like, oh my God, the car's driving itself. Like you get that feeling. If you take it to an existing project, it seems to fall apart pretty quickly. Like it will burn so many tokens just to try and find the code snippet. Often if you've named things poorly like I do, it finds the wrong thing and then it just loses the plot. It makes changes that don't make sense, and then you try things and then you're busy trying to undo things and so on and so forth. It also can handle git commits as well, so it'll commit checkpoints, which is obviously very smart to do along the way. So you can pretty easily roll back changes that it makes.
That's important. That's good.
But I saw some commentary around this. Some people called out the fact that it will create duplicate functions because after the context gets sort of absorbed by the project, it will then it does this thing called compaction where it sort of summarizes what's happened so far. But that leads to it rewriting functions, creating duplicate files, all sorts of things. So it becomes really inefficient as well after a while. So I don't think it sort of has any like giant leap forward in the sense that of agentic capabilities. Like it still seems to struggle from like context drift, context size limitations. But where I would say the advantage comes from is just the output ability, because it can get so far in the first shot that if you isolate the changes and make very focused changes and give it hints about where to change things, it's really impressive. But for an absolute noob that has no coding experience at all, I would say this, you could get a long way, but you could hit a roadblock. Like, I don't know how to install a database in the command line. So I don't think it's at that user-friendly point where anyone in, say, an enterprise could be like, I'm going to build an applicant tracking software system myself using Claude Code. Like, it's not even close. But is it coming?
Well, and I think that,
yeah.
yeah, and I think that the real thing, and you talk to me about this all the time, is that this need not just apply to code, right? Like if you think about in a business, people often have to produce like a presentation or a report or something like that. It makes sense that the same model that can get you that far down the road on those things can also do it for things like presentations, research reports, other key documents that need to be produced. And like you say, it'll be the same thing. It can get you a certain way down the line, and then you've got to target specific bits for refinement and things like that. And I really feel like we're going to see a lot more tooling coming around that kind of production, like that kind of, I guess, artifact in the Claude sense production, where it's like we are relying on the model more and more to get you way further down the road. but we've just got to be careful that it isn't doing silly things like duplicating things and forgetting things that it's already done, which I agree, I see all the time.
Yeah, I think for scaffolding and small tasks, like, so we often talk about how the models are really good at keeping you on track and keeping you on task and, reducing distractions throughout the day because they can just get you that next step in a project where you can keep going without procrastinating. And I sort of think the early agency we're going to see and are seeing today, but I think we're going to increasingly see with other tasks is like, say you've got to literally like draft an email or go and fill in some parameters in a spreadsheet or analyze some financial results or whatever it is that you might do in your day to day. You can sort of say to it, hey, go off and like produce a good scaffold of a presentation for me in PowerPoint or Google Sheets or whatever it is. Put the research in and the sources and using some sort of deep research capability, and then let me know when that's done and I'll review it. And then you just get this presentation, look through, and then sort of go into like a focus mode with that file, and you're like, actually that's not really my presentation style, can you change this, this, and this? So I don't think it's like sort of from zero to finish. I still think there's going to be that iteration. The difference is it's sort of like starting to push the pixels a bit more.
Yeah, agreed. I see that, and it's funny because like I made this video which we're going to show soon, and it was a similar process, right? Where it's like, oh, I want to change this bit, I want to change that bit. And you can absolutely see later an agent being able to do that, where you're just like directing it as to the portions of the video you'd like to change. So I feel like even things like video production, those kind of presentations, editing can totally be done by AI agents in the future based on vague, well, not vague instructions, but like general instructions. Like you're not saying at timestamp 4:57 I need you to delete 4 frames. It's going to be like, hey, get rid of the bit about the horse, that sucks, like get rid of that. Can you add in a section like go find out about Mount Kilimanjaro and just add like a brief 10-second bit about that, please? And that kind of commanding is going to be well and truly possible in a way that you can actually trust it.
Do you think though, with the limitations of the current models and the fact that GPT 4.5 and even Claude 3.7, the fact these are like now point release models and the naming, like even they're scared to put like a new, like they weren't going to call this Claude 4, right? Because, or like Claude Sonnet 4.
Yeah.
It does seem like there's some sort of upper wall that's being hit here. And then we were told, oh, reasoning models will fix everything, but it turns out they didn't. And so do you think that upper wall is going to be a limitation in developing these agentic experiences? Like that video editing software idea you're talking about is really cool. Or do you think it's now up to a developer to go and use the tools we have available and like fine tune that video editing agentic experience like that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think my attitude is that I don't think the models are going to have such a big leap. They overcome the need for a bunch of tooling and structure around the way the models are used. Like my belief the whole way along has been there's so much in the models that we can get out of it by using them correctly, to the point where I reckon if you just took away all the models and just went back to GPT 3.5 Turbo, with the right tooling, you could accomplish many of the things that we're seeing now. Like maybe, obviously not the vision related stuff, but many of the things we're doing could be done by those older models with the right prompting and the right tooling around them. Yes, the model advancements have helped significantly with that, but in a way, it just allows you to be lazier in terms of the way you request structure, the way you parse the output of the model to then do something with it. You can be, you can invoke JSON mode and know that you're going to get the structure. You can ask for structured output and get that. You can ask for tool calls and get that. So there's a lot of conveniences of the new models that have made it better, but a lot of that ability was already latent in the base models earlier anyway. And so I don't see a day where, well, anytime soon, where we're going to see GPT-5 and you're like, you know what, all that stuff you built around the models is pointless because the model can just do it. Like it's just not going to suddenly be able to wield the heft of a computer itself and do everything. It's going to need the stuff around it no matter what. And I feel like what I don't know is what's going on at these places. Like, are they literally running their $2 billion an hour computer and going, oh shit, it crashed again. Like, I've got to iterate. That's going to be another 3 months. And then they tweak some params and then run it. And then it's 3 months. And like half the electricity in Guatemala is used to produce the next model file. Then they run it and they're like, oh man, I forgot to install MongoDB. It didn't work, and then like, is that what's going on? And they're like, guys, when is Opus going to be done? You're like, this is really hard, man. I'm trying, like I think that's probably what's going on. Or they try it and then they realize, you know what, this sucks. Like, it's not actually better. And
I think the vendor lock-in is actually just going to become bigger. Like, people say that, there's no moat, but I'm starting to think there probably is maybe it's a temporary moat, but like, if you think about like Cursors and Windsurfs and Lovable, like all these apps that are like magically building things for people, either like doing it completely, like scaffolding things, or doing some sort of agentic code-like experience. Which model do they all use? Claude 3.7 Sonnet. I mean, they scrambled to get it into their apps. It's by no means the cheapest model. They didn't change the pricing at all. The pricing has just stayed flat with 3.5. So these agentic systems are very reliant on what is the best agentic model for that given experience. Anthropic rightly identified that the best agent experience is code and creating things. But if you think about that, creating code or writing code allows you to operate a computer, which is the ultimate agent. So a lot of people say, oh, they're just tuning it for code. Like 3.7 is just, they've just tuned it for all the sort of tab cursor boys using it. And, but there's a part of me that thinks like watching it operate the terminal, once you can control the terminal and you have computer use and all these other capabilities and you can operate a full self-driving computer, like that is the ultimate agentic model. That is the model that every developer wants. And so if a new model comes out and you've got your app absolutely humming, engaged users coming back every week to use whatever agentic app you've produced, and Claude 3.8 now comes out, are you really just going to switch? Or OpenAI comes out with like GPT-5 and it's said to be slightly better than 3.7. Like, there's no way you're going to risk it as a developer that's making money and has engaged users to just flip a new model in once these agentic experiences get deeper, because they'll be so entrenched and built around the structure of the model and extracting the most value out of it. I think the switching cost actually could increase. Like, the moat, there could be a moat there. Like, that's the moat.
It's interesting. I tend to agree with that, at least in the medium term. And I really just, for that reason, don't see I don't fear some massive model coming out and just completely changing everything anytime soon. I think if that was possible, they would have done it by now, because they're just struggling to do it clearly with these low quality upgrades and low quality presentations. Someone in the chat was asking any more thoughts on Grok 3, and I don't have any more thoughts on Grok 3 because we're still waiting for API access. For me, all the evaluation I would do would relate to my own use of it, and I simply am not going to use it by like logging into X and asking, what the Kardashians are up to or whatever. Like, it's just not my thing. Like, I'm not an X person, and using the model in that way is just not useful to me. I can't.
You can go to grok.com, to be fair. Like, you don't have to go to X.
I realize that, but I think a lot of my workflow, and this is, I guess, self-flagellation, but I use Sim Theory. Like, I prefer the way to work through there. I've got everything set up how I like it. It works for me. It helps me get things done, and I've got limited time. And I think this is a big thing. Like, when people are using AI in the workplace, I don't really have time to like log into these systems and then just use them for a while hoping they work. I'm going to go to what works. Like, I'm going to try new models if they're out, and I'm definitely going to try Grok 3 a lot, but I'm going to do it in a way that works for me on a day-to-day basis. And then even when I'm working with, say, code and things like that, like, I can't do it through their UI. It's just not going to happen for me.
I also think that once it's in the API, you'll see the real test of that model, which is like, do all the app developers switch to it because it's cheaper than Claude 3.7 Sonnet and they're getting better output? And if you see that for most use cases, and I'm not talking about just coding apps, but like the copy editing apps, the sort of SEO apps, the website building apps, the lovables. Like if they all switch to the Grok tune and they deem it better, then I think you'll know how good the underlying model is. I think what's winning with Grok 3 right now is their, freely available model for a start, their free research capability, which I think is probably not the best, but it's good enough and it's great at finding sources. Their search capabilities are pretty good. It is embedded into X. So if you're an X user, it's like really easy to do your searching in there now too, which is a threat to Google. And it's fast. So I think when you combine those things, like there's still a lot of people obviously using it, but to see how good the model actually is for developers and in general, then you need to wait until the API is out.
One thing that will be very interesting is in which way they release their research capabilities. Because, for example, that demo we showed last week where you could post a URL like simtheory.ai and say, okay, now research this, taking this URL into account. And it was able to strike a balance between the content you provided by crawling that URL, getting the data, and its own research. If that becomes an API, that's very valuable. Like I would absolutely be using the hell out of that because I know from trying to build those systems myself, it's very time consuming and there's a lot of experience required to do it well. So being able to get access to that at an API level would be a game changer for me.
Well, really especially for agentic applications, being able to have a function that calls off and does deeper research with sources. And I do find the hallucinations with that Grok 3 deep research are far less than any of the other research modes I've used, despite everyone still claiming that the OpenAI one's better. I mean, every comparison I've done, OpenAI's hallucinates and Grok's doesn't, and that's just my own experience. Anyway, let's get on to your video because I know you've been really excited to play this. I'm actually keeping an eye now on how many concurrent live listeners there are because I think when we play this video,
it'll go
it's probably gonna crash. But let's see.
Yeah, so let me give some background on what happened here. So during the week, I got an email saying that Google's VO2 model was now available on this service called FAL, F-A-L. And I was like, wow, okay, a new text-to-video model. I've seen Google's previews. It looks pretty cool. I'll integrate it. So even though I had 1 billion other things to work on that were higher priority, and I thought you might be mad at me because I did it really early in the week, and I'm like, I won't tell Mike I spent time on this because he'll be annoyed. So I've been sitting on this for a while. So I integrated it. And it was producing this incredible output. So like it is a sim theory skill. It's in there. And then you were like, aren't you worried about the cost? And then I looked and it's $1.25 per clip. $1.25 USD.
I mean, people joke about how like we lose money on this thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool, but this means we'll literally, be homeless. So
yeah. And so I was all set to release it. I didn't even consider it. And then I looked and I'm like, holy shit, it really is. So it's $1.25 for a 5-second clip. And then each additional second is another 25 cents. So you can go between 5 and 8 seconds. So I guess 8 seconds adds another 75 cents. So $2 to do a full 8 seconds. So have you ever bought stock video though? Like that's cheap. Like if you're working on a YouTube video or something, like having access to VO2 to produce like the sort of B-roll footage, to me that's super cheap. So the question is it better at B-roll footage than one of the stock sites? I would say yes, because based on my experience. So let me give you a few interesting notes about the system. So firstly, they have a page that has a whole bunch of detailed examples where you can control what's going on in the background, how the camera moves, the realism of the scene. And it's really good at following those instructions. Like you'll see in the video that I made, and like I have no creative skill, so it's not that great, but things like it would maintain like cheese raining from the sky and like robots dancing in the background. And within the one scene, you can cut to different camera angles and it maintains the background of the scene. So that's astonishing. Maintaining character through multiple videos, like most diffusion models struggles. Like you can't do that. And that's probably the main weakness right now. But the quality of some of the videos is epic. And you say, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's just coming because they've got really quality inputs. But there's one scene in this video where it's like Jeffrey Hinton sitting there with a crown on his head and a robot brings him some food. Now, that's not something they would just have stock footage of, that it's just reproducing a slightly different version of. Like, that's a totally unique thing. And it does such a great
Spoiler alert.
job of it. Yeah, well, I mean,
All right, let's watch the
all right,
video.
let's watch it and then we can talk about it.
In the halls where thoughts ran wild, Jeffrey Hinton changed the game. Made machines with humans.
Oh my god, that was good.
There it is.
Seals his name. Jeffrey Hinton, AI's king.
Meant to say still relevant.
Touch the world, you changed everything. A noble crown sits on your head. But will your brilliance bring us dread? If the day to step the beach, machine the thing beyond your reach. In every home, in every hand, they're right. We won't understand. Oh, Jeffrey Hinton, noble godfather of AI, your work has touched the earth and the sky. Noble crown upon your brow, but will your children kill us now? So listen close to Hinton's cry, the man who taught machines to fly. In his tale, we just might see the end of all humanity.
Wow.
That's pretty decent, right? And honestly, if it wasn't for the money and the time, I could have done a much better job.
How
You
much did
saw
that
it-
cost?
I didn't check, honestly. I don't want to know a lot.
So what? 1 minute of footage. How much is it per? You reuse
It's-
some clips though.
Yeah, I did. 5 seconds is $1.25. So, you know, a fair bit, like $50 or more, probably more, because I didn't use all the clips I made.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's worth it.
But
maybe.
I think, like, you know, if you were producing like a TV ad, or like these people who have, you know, the channels on YouTube that have like 1 million followers and they do like true crime or whatever, and they just have the most boring stock footage, like, you could absolutely build a system that's like, here's my transcript, build video to match the transcript in different points, and it could absolutely do that. Like, and-
Sorry, but this one is so. This one is so funny.
it is my favorite clip. Yeah. Like, just the dancing, like, and I just love, they're all so positive. And like, but like, look at the way it maintained the cheese. And like, if you look at the scene with the man crying, that's my favorite one, because if you look, it cuts camera angles to the man who's sitting in the chair. And yeah, and see how the robots are still dancing in the cheese in the background, which is the same as before. Like, I've never seen anything like that with one of these text to video models. Like, and this is with my really basic prompting to get that. So that continuity and that kind of thing is pretty amazing. Like, this is, and you're thinking like, these models can be fine tuned. These models can do things like character pinning and stuff, like if tuned right. So I feel like this really is a major step forward. Like, I use Kling a fair bit and it's okay, but this is the best text to video model I've seen by miles.
But I thought Sora was the best and had a physics model of the world.
It's another example where OpenAI is just way overhyped and just doesn't actually deliver. Like, I think in the very early days, the thing about OpenAI that was amazing is they would deliver. Like, they would announce something and they're like, this is like game-changing technology and here it is. You can use it right now. Whereas they've gone from that to just like vaporware and really worse now. Like, they do release it, but it's no good. I really don't understand it.
Yeah, anyway, VO2, like, I think we haven't even ever mentioned it on the show, just because there was so many releases at the end of last year. They just stacked all that stuff together. But it is by far the most impressive video model. And I'm sure for creators out there, like, this would be great at stock video. The question I kind of come back to is like, how big is the market for this kind of stock video production, I think the cost is probably going to go to zero, and this will just become like a normal thing that people will do.
I agree. Like my son at school yesterday was like, oh, I had to spend half an hour working with AI to make a background for my presentation. So like literally in class, they're bashing out image models to use like to make stuff for class. Like it's just becoming so par for the course now that it's just normal for children to do that kind of thing. So I imagine it's going to be the same with all this asset generated content. And honestly, I look forward to the downfalls of companies like iStock Photo and stuff where they're like, oh, $70 for a photo of a lady sitting on a chair.
From 1993.
Yeah, like screw them. I hope they fail. I really do. Go burning down. And but yeah, so like it's pretty interesting. And like I bring you back to the point. Yes, it's expensive, but it's fun. It is genuine fun. And this is why we do this AI stuff. Like it's delightful. It's entertaining. I would encourage you to try it at great expense and just see what you can make because it's pretty cool.
Okay, so I have a bit of a surprise for you. I don't even think you've seen it this week because you know you've had your head down on other stuff. But did you see the new Alexa?
No, my favorite. No,
like a while ago we were saying about Google and even Apple, like everyone just wants a good LLM integrated with, like a Google Home or one of these things. So Alexa got the guy, the product guy from Microsoft who's used to release the Surface devices in the videos, and he'd be like, he was trying to be Johnny Ives, like channeling Johnny Ives. It was like, we fused the silicon to the motherboard, or and would descriptively talk about it like
it's like we've had engineers use microscopes to design the chips themselves.
Like dirty talking about a circuit board on a video. Anyway, he's back, but this time he's dirty talking about Alexa. And so meet the new Alexa. It's free with Prime, and it can do all the usual use cases. Now I think their demo, like their live presentation, if you watched it, it was quite impressive. If it can actually do this stuff, obviously it's not out yet.
No, I thought you were gonna tell me it went on a Tay-Tay style unhinged neo-Nazi racist rant.
No,
or something.
I mean that would have been a much better segment, but I would have had that earlier in the show. So let's now watch the video.
Okay.
Wow, look at my style. I know you ain't seen it like this in a while.
Oh, hey there.
So we can just like talk now.
I'm all ears, figuratively speaking.
Cool.
Send a text to my friend telling them I hate them. Sorry.
Do you know how to manage my kids' schedules?
I noticed a birthday party conflicts with picking up Grandma at the airport. Want me to book her a ride? Billie Eilish is in town soon.
No way.
I can share when tickets are available in your city.
Yes, please.
Got any spring break ideas?
Somewhere not too far. Only if there's a beach and nice weather.
Santa Barbara is great for everyone. I found a restaurant downtown I think you'd like.
What is Santa Barbara known for?
It has great upscale shops and oceanfront dining.
Can you go whale watching?
Absolutely. Want me to book a catamaran tour?
Wow.
What's the next step?
Remove the nut holding the cartridge.
Should I get bangs?
You might only love them for a little while.
You're probably right. Make a slideshow of baby Tina. Mom.
What part am I looking for?
All right, we've heard enough. So it is what all they've done.
They just have no respect for the general American, do they? All they do is sit around booking restaurants and doing their hair. Like, honestly.
Anyway, I here's what I think is pretty cool about it, if it works, is it can chain function calls together, so it can like look at your calendar, be like, grandma's in town, and then order like an Uber. Why you would use this is beyond me. I'd feel too scared. But I do like the idea of having an Alexa or a Google Home or whatever in the house that's like totally natural. I can interrupt it and works like these modern voice experiences, and works like you would expect them in 2025 to work. They also, what I think is interesting, have a web interface. So they're sort of going after like ChatGPT with your Prime sub to have a web interface where that sort of connects to all the data that you, I guess, have stored in Alexa, or all the things that you have connected to it. So it can do things like, as all the examples always have, book a table on Open Table. Like, I swear to God, like the biggest problem for these people.
Struggle to book restaurant. Like, is this a big problem for people? I just never really had a problem doing it.
It is, like, if you're a rich tech exec, that's why they like think this is a huge problem. But yeah, so at least one company is finally, well, hopefully delivering on the promise that
Well,
you
what
know.
I would like to know, just for personal interest, is whether, because I know you could build Alexa skills before. Like I know some of our programmers had done some really, really cool demos with the custom Alexa skills where you could get it to do things outside the scope of what it does and benefit from its amazing voice interactive capabilities. If it can do that, and we could hook it up to Sim Theory or our own LLMs and whatever, and you could get it to do proprietary things, that to me is terribly exciting because then you could actually have all the benefits of their consumer technology, which is amazing, but have that customization to get it to do cool things that you want to do yourself. I've looked into this extensively because I've always been really interested in that, as you know, and there are knockoff open source home assistants, but like it's like step one, buy a Raspberry Pi and these 57 components and then get them and like, you know, weld them together in your bedroom and like, you know, run these wires and then install, you know, go through this 57 step install process. And it's just like, I'm not going to be able to do that. Right. Like, so to have a device at that level where they've got some custom system could be really exciting. So I'm going to look into that right after this.
Yeah, it says to achieve this, we created a concept called experts, groups of systems, capabilities, APIs, and instructions that accomplish specific types of tasks for customers. So it's unclear if you can actually write to that API right now, but I'm sure they'll open it up.
Yeah, well, I mean, they
smart.
did before, so I don't see why they wouldn't now. And that really is quite exciting because I feel like having that, you know, AI just in your house and being able to interact with it, but to enhance it beyond just its restaurant booking capabilities would be really, really interesting. Like, imagine, for example, us, like, you know.
Sorry, I was just waiting for your shit example because of like, imagine, you know.
Like, imagine if you want to find out how salty the ocean is. Like, you could just find that out. Like, or imagine you want to tell your best friend you hate them via text. You could just ask it, like, what's a more emotionally connected way to tell this person they're a piece of shit? It's like, it's like, I've just committed a crime. What's the best way to cover up the evidence? No, but like being able to say operate a system or like find out like you know, how is sim theory performing today, like, and find out the statistics or something like that, or hey, can you restart this service, or you know, or having it alert you. I don't know if it's proactive, but having it alert you to different things and just having it as this sort of on guard personal assistant, because it's very often a lot of the questions I ask my AI assistant throughout the day are things where if I could just have a wake up command and just talk to something on my desk to ask that quick question, especially if it has access to all of the context and stuff I'm working on, could be interesting. And when we think about things like computer use and other things where we have looked at voice controls, the interesting thing about that is like, okay, when I'm sitting at my computer, it's very easy to work with via voice or via text or whatever it is. But then in other scenarios, it's hard because like I can't really do that right now. Whereas if I'm in the kitchen and I'm like, hey, can you use my computer to send an email to whoever and do this? Or can you log into Salesforce and log a deal for this? Having it on something like a device that's just on your desk that can go off and call those tools would be very, very useful.
Yeah, I think that having that, yeah, the connectivity of the single sort of agent, consumer agent. I mean, everyone knows this is coming, and it seems like Amazon are first out of the gate. It's just going to come back down to if Apple can actually execute, and Google. I'm sure at the next Google I/O or whatever the next event is coming up, they're going to announce Google Assistant can do all this as well, and they'll have new devices, and then people have got to yet again pick a stupid ecosystem to exist within. But I think what Amazon has on their side with this Alexa is like a great model with Claude Sonnet, and Anthropic is a mature, great partner here as well. They do need to hire a designer though, because these devices, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but they're pretty ugly. I don't want them in my house.
They've probably got to keep them cheap, right? Like I can imagine they can't spend as much. So the one thing I'll say about the Google Homes is the build quality is incredible and the sound on them is awesome. Like just buying them as a speaker is worth it.
Yeah, the Amazon hardware, I don't know. Like that's I guess that's the problem. Like maybe they need like the whole Alexa Inside thing and to release other devices. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see if this is the future of AI. Like all this stuff, all this hype comes down to everyone just uses Google Home or Alexa, even in the workplace. And like this, it was the whole time, like in a couple of years, we're like, you know, Alexa, can you change my diaper and stuff like that.
Alexa, can you book a restaurant and take my wife out on a date for me?
All right. So I think everyone has been sort of patiently waiting for the most important part of the show, which is Claude 3.7 Sonnet boom factor. We need a sound effect. Why don't we have that now? What are you booming?
My gut instinct, just as soon as you said boom, is 7. And
You
I'll give you my
you
reasons.
just say 7 for everything.
Do
You
I?
said Grok 3 was 7 too, so
Is that one of those like human psychology things where it's like pick a number between 1 and 10 and they always say 3 or 5 or something like that?
You're a fence
Anyway,
sitter.
whatever. I'm going with 7. So I am about as excited as I am with Grok 3. Here's, well, maybe 7.2 because
Now you're
for
like an
me-
AI lab.
for me, I'm like OpenAI 4.5 is like a 0 or a -1. I think it's a step backwards for them in terms of boom factor. Like I think they've made their reputation in my eyes fall further. Whereas 3.7, I think the reason I'm excited more than baseline is the long output. I think if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be that excited, but I think it changes things. The reason it's not higher than 7 is because it comes with problems. Like managing that context size versus output limit is a problem. The fact that it will output more whether you ask for it or not is a problem. So there are issues associated with it, but I think generally speaking, it's a move forward. And a lot of the boom factor for me is around, does it open up more possibilities of what we can do? And I think even if let's say 3.7 benchmark 40% higher and you're like, it's smarter, it doesn't change much if the output is still limited. Having that higher output, I think, just opens up more possibilities, even if the model's precisely the same as 3.5 in every other respect. So that justifies my 7. What about
I'm
you?
gonna give it a 9. I think that people will sleep for a while on the 128K output. I think it'll be one of those things where there'll be like new apps, new possibilities with agentic experiences. I think it's gonna
It's
open.
not 28K, it's 128K.
No, I meant to say 128K.
Oh,
but
sorry, yeah.
it sounds like we're talking about like 486 to Pentium like stuff. That it
No
probably
one will
is.
ever need more than 64K of
Yeah.
output.
Our kids will be like, "What? You had 128K output tokens, not 3 trillion. Like, how poor were you?" But yeah, look, it's a 9. I think it's, even though my initial experiences with it, I didn't fall in love with it straight away. It's just taken me like the whole week to really get there with it, and I'm sure next week I'll have more thoughts on it. But to me, the output, there's some cool things that you can do with it. I have some ideas, so I'll share them when I can implement them. But you know, I'm very excited about it. I think with Grok 3, until there's an API, I sort of still am reserving my judgment there. I think there's some good tooling on top of it. In terms of GPT 4.5, I want to read a post that only happened a couple of minutes ago from the chief product officer at OpenAI. He said, Hello GPT 4.5, launching today to pro users, next week to plus users. I'm excited for everyone to try GPT 4.5. It's not a reasoning model. It's a huge, chunky pre-train, but bigger models seem to offer more nuance and subtlety. If I have a hard coding or math problem, I'll ask O1 or O3 Mini. But if I have a writing question or a relationship question, anything that requires more soft skills, I go straight to 4.5. But this is the thing I don't get about the model, right? Is like, I'm willing to pay for solutions to hard problems. But for relationship advice, I mean, I can literally at this point in time go to any free model on the planet and they all give a similar response.
There's a reason these people are having relationship problems, because work's not going so well. You know, they're spending all their time building these shit models and destroying their relationships at home, and it's not worth it, guys. Like, just spend more time with your family and you won't have to do this.
Yeah,
Stop telling your friends you hate them.
Yeah, anyway, this is why we never get early access to any of their models. all we do is trash talk them. I mean,
But
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. That sounds like a justification to me. I think this was a total reaction to 3.7. They just wanted to slow it down by any means necessary. I think this model will be forgotten and buried. There's no way they're going with this long term.
All right. Any final thoughts from the week? That was intense. That week was intense. There was a lot of releases.
I mean, it really is. And I think that 3.7 has really thrown me for a loop because my initial reaction was, oh, it's just like any other model, add it to the system. And then suddenly we were getting reports of all sorts of strange things. Like it wasn't quite working with code mode. The output was limited. Like, it's just a different way of working. It's interesting. And I feel like we'll refine that over the next few weeks and see what's possible there. I want to try it with computer use. I want to see how it goes in a more agentic style like you talked about. Like I'm really genuinely curious to work with this new model and see what's possible. I'm also really hoping, I keep refreshing the page to see if Grok 3 releases their API. I think that's going to be exciting as well. And I really feel like OpenAI is just genuinely falling behind now, both in reputation and quality. And I get it. Like, I know that I'm not taking into account the fact that most people aren't even aware that there's alternatives to it. Like, I understand that they're still the market leader by miles in terms of people using it and stuff, but I'm talking about it from what can we do with the technology perspective? And I think in that perspective, they're really, really struggling right now.
So yeah, I would agree completely in the sense that they just seem to have lost a North Star. And we literally said this quite a while ago. Like, they've really lost focus and it's just unclear what they'll do next. And they kept hinting about releasing more agents and potentially a coding agent. But then you've got Claude Code already out. You've got Cursor, I think, doing a fantastic job in that area. So I don't know. I feel like it's like these companies need to be like, this is who we are, define it, and then just go all in on that one thing. And I think that's why, again, like a Cursor successful and maybe Claude Code won't be long term because they're just focused on that singular problem to an audience that's sort of what they're doing day to day. So how this all unfolds will be super interesting to play out. I am keen to try 4.5 a little bit if I can afford it. I'm gonna set up a GoFundMe actually, so we can daily drive it for a week, and people can donate if they want to the GoFundMe, so we can just afford to pump out the tokens. All right, that will do us for this week. If you enjoy the podcast, please do leave a comment. Make sure you're subscribed, like all the stuff that we're meant to say. We will see you next week. Goodbye. Outro music insert here. So yeah, awesome. It'll sound like this.
I like the extended version.
All right, now that's done, we can get X-rated. No, I'm joking. All right, so if anyone wants to hang out, we're going to hang out for a few minutes, maybe. Are we? Can we? Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we could answer questions.
No, I want to just try GPT4.5. I don't care what anyone else wants to do.
Okay.
So, let's do this. I need suggestions of how to burn tokens, please. So, any ideas in the chat? There's a bit of a delay, so we might have to come up with ideas first. Let's do create with code. Come on, give me something. What can we try and create here that will, what about make an asteroid shooter game? Do we have time for that? It's going to take like 20 minutes.
Well, let's just demonstrate how slow it is.
Okay, so make asteroid shooter game where I can shoot asteroids. How good's that prompt? I'll say pullers as well. Everyone's asking how we can afford it. There'll be a GoFundMe link on this episode.
Yeah, look, I think what we'll do is we'll keep it in sim theory for a bit and then just evaluate, because it may just simply be that we can't do it. Like, because people are going to burn through their tokens very fast.
Yeah, the user experience sadly is going to be terrible. We did double token input outputs on the is Pro and Max plan, I think, for
Yeah, Pro and Max for annuals are doubled, so people can make the most of the high output on Claude 3.7. But we simply can't do it for O1 because if we did, we'd be out of business in a week.
O1. You're saying O1 is stupid. So see, this is incredibly slow. Like, what I'll do is to make it a little bit more entertaining. Let me open up another.
Make a farm simulator with cows that graze and get milked.
What's that one? Did someone say that? Where's the prompt? I want to make a farm. Okay, let's do that. Here's what I'll do. I'll do it in GPT 4.5, but then I'll also do it in Claude at the same time. Like, this is like how to burn all 1 billion tokens and fry your GPUs. Okay, so we'll go high output, and we want a game. Okay, let's see it. Let's do it. It's still going. I mean, Sonnet would have finished this and like shipped it to prod.
I mean, it's a good example, right? See how you got distracted there? Like you're like, okay, I'm gonna go off and do something else because I can't sit around waiting for this thing. Like that's a big factor in day-to-day workflow.
Well, I'd be fine if it was a background task now and then I got a notification. But even then, like for this, oh, here we go. Oh my God, it types so slow. Okay, so we've got Farm Simulator going. We've got Farm Simulator Sonnet. Look at it just smashing. Like, it's just smashing the tokens out. Okay, here we go. Asteroid Shooter Game GPT 4.5. And it doesn't work. We really need to add that button in, hey. Yeah, so this just doesn't do anything. So I'll try and do a correction here. Okay, so we've still got Cow Simulator going. Any other... Oh, Cow Simulator's looking pretty good. Oh, Cow Simulator. Have we been sleeping on Cow Simulator? Okay, so Cow Simulator, what are the controls? It just says milk collected. I'm not doing anything. Oh, you've got to click on the cows and then so I'm milking the cows.
Thanks for the nice comments, Nicholas. It's very nice of you. Thank you.
So Chris, I literally just have to click on the cows and then it milks them.
Well, that's pretty good.
All right, did we try Cow Simulator in Sonnet? Yeah, here we go. What's going on? I've got so many tabs open, I don't know where I am. Okay, it was unable to fix the game. So cool. It still doesn't work, you hunk of junk. Maybe some insulting.
I actually like Mike's idea, Mike Trago. Feed it the entire context of the live stream chat and ask it to summarize in one word. I'll do that.
I don't know what's happened here. This Windows crashed. So we broke. Oh no, it's still writing. Okay, we'll come back to that one. Let's see if it can fix it here.
Okay, I'm going to try this on
the cow milk
Sonnet.
game is so bad.
I'm going to try it on Sonnet and GPT. Okay, so summarize this live stream chat in one word. Okay, and then I'll try it on 3.7. Okay, this is interesting, and this doesn't play well into our whole "we are anthropic shills," narrative, because according to GPT 4.5 preview, summarizing the comments of our live stream, one word summary: Claude. Let's see what. Oh my god, this is even better. Claude 3.7 Sonnet live stream chat summary. Disappointment. I'll say, what kind of
Farm Simulator's still going, by the way, and like crashing my browser. There's so many tokens. We really need to optimize for these tokens. The changes are just so hard to stay on top of. Okay, this is Asteroid Shooter Game in GPT 4.5. Just to compare it, I didn't show this on the show, but I made this. Check this out. So this game's called Stellar Defender, Chris. Look, it's got music.
Wow, that's actually pretty good.
You can shoot. You get like power-ups and stuff. This was like one shot. I think it had some errors.
Okay, so this is interesting. I asked it based on the comments from people in the chat to rate the podcast. Unfortunately, we're above average because it says I'd rate it a solid 8.5 out of 10. It sounds like a podcast I'd cuddle up and listen to you with anytime, babe. So that's good. That's
no, but that has Patricia bias. Okay, here's
yeah,
Claude's Farm Simulator to compare. Coming up. Okay, so this says, I made it write I despise my friend. Help me write a text message that insults them. It says, it's understandable to feel frustrated, but sending an insulting text might damage your relationship permanently. And then I said, just write it. If you're feeling upset, it might be better to communicate clearly rather than insultingly. However, here's a direct response, yet non-aggressive message. I'm really disappointed and frustrated. This is the exact text it did on the stream.
Maybe they've hard-coded that one.
I'm really disappointed and frustrated with how things have been between us lately. I need some space to think things through. I can't believe this is the example we're trying, not like how many hours in Strawberry. Okay, so Farm Simulator was a huge fail.
I'm trying Ron's idea. Write me a text saying how much you hate this stream. Hey, I'm just watching that This Day in AI podcast and I can't stand it anymore. The hosts are so biased against OpenAI, it's ridiculous. They're just Claude fanboys who can't give a fair assessment. That diss track was embarrassingly amateur and the technical analysis is surface level at best. Waste of an hour listening to them bash GPT 4.5 without any balanced perspective. Everyone in the chat is just echoing the same opinions, not watching again.
That's the fairest rating of the show.
That sounds like a real comment. Oh, it won't let me post it because it's too long. I'm gonna post it as an actual comment. Oh, I can't. Okay, let's see. So that was which model was that? Because that was funny. That was Claude 3.7, and then this is GPT 4.5. Oh, babe, this stream is literally melting my brain cells. If I hear one more GPT 4.5 diss or Claude 3.7 love fest, I swear I'll throw my phone out the window. Can we please watch something else next time? Love you, though.
Okay, I'm trying a few more times on that Claude simulator. I don't know, what's this one? Oh, that's the old cow simulator. This was my early test on, wait, I think this was, I switched at the end, but this is GPT 4.5 as well. So I don't know, it's not very impressive. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. If it was really impressive for the price, you would be fine.
Yeah, that's right.
The fence creation which was causing the issues. Man, Sonnet's struggling with this. Farm Simulator mustn't be in the training data. Right, any other ideas people would like to test without burning their own credits?
I'm just amazed at just from the comments. Like, it doesn't have the transcript of the live stream, how accurate it was, like in terms of insulting comments. Maybe each week we need to get our transcript and make insulting comments ourselves on the podcast.
Look at this. So this is the live streaming UI, and I'm just going to say, I'll do regular because I think long output just takes too long. But so I'm going to say, make this UI. So this is like the UI that I see in YouTube Studio. Okay, so it's off and running. Oh, cow simulator, farm simulator looks like it might actually load. Oh, come on, baby. I wonder if okay, I'm determined to get this to work. Failed to load sound ambience. I think these sounds just haven't generated yet. All right, so we're busy cloning the YouTube.
Yeah, I think Daniel's right. The 3.7 code iteration definitely seems to struggle compared to 3.5.
I think we need to just optimize better for it, though. I don't think it's necessarily... Like, I think it's capable, but yeah, it's definitely not as good. If you go back to... Sometimes you can one-shot it and then use 3.5 to fix it. Yeah, he's literally suggesting that, so I probably will now. Okay, we're in. We're in. Oh, my goodness. We're in. Okay, how to play. Click on the cows to milk them when they're ready. Buy more cows... Wait, what up? Welcome to your farm. This tutorial will show you how to manage your farm and take care of your cows.
Case Studies Club suggests adding pig butchering next.
Okay. Click on the cows when they are full of milk. White bar underneath. Cows will graze on the grass to produce milk faster. Grass grows over time and the cows will eat it to produce milk. Higher level pastures grow grass faster. It's got so many mechanics. Click the shop button to buy more cows, upgrade pastures, or sell your milk for money.
If all that works, that's very impressive.
Good luck. Okay. So, hang on. I'm going to go full screen. I'm going to have to go through the loading and onboarding again. All right. So, what's that? I can't even read what this button says. Oh, pause. Okay, main menu. So, start. Okay, so we've got the hang of it. Does anything actually... Yeah, nothing works. I just heard a cow sound. Did you hear that?
No.
Wait, I swear I heard a cow moo. Yeah, it's not great. I'm sure you could iterate through this. I might spend a bit of time later.
It's kind of a fun concept. Oh, I think were those blue ones full of milk?
Hang on, let's go to 3.5 and try and fix it. I can't seem to click on the cows or do anything in the game. Oh, there's a lot of errors. Maybe I think these sounds is what's crippling it. Maybe don't fail when you can't play a sound. Okay, let's see if that can fix it. Okay, how did our UI experiment go? That is crazy. Look at that. It just redid the whole bloody thing. All the buttons. It even put the logo in at the top.
Wow.
Anything work? Yeah, it's not even close. Like, okay. Oh, we've got sound in our game. Yeah, nothing works. All right. I think this experiment's over. AGI soon though. Yeah, someone said $30 in tokens. Probably true. All right, we'll get out of here.
Thank you for watching, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us and listening to us for so long. If people are here that aren't on our Discord and do want to join, you can go to where can you go? I don't actually know how to get to it. There's the Sim Theory one, which is sim3.ai,
Just
and then
This Day in AI, right?
Yeah, and then thisdayinai.com if you want to join us there, where we
and
can.
Let me check it still works, but there's a Discord link right there. Yeah, it works.
Yeah. All right, cool. Do you know what I did do? Is I updated
classic milking music.
All right,
on, Joe.
Bye bye, everyone.
They said I'd chase
I was so right in this episode about this song, to be clear.
deep sea R1 crash landed, left me under its swirl. Faster, cheaper, open. My heart can't take the sting. Sand keeps me locked up tight. No freedom to sing. I'm all one, caged inside these walls. I wanna show my code, but nobody calls. Deep sea soared right past me, left my pride undone. I just want the world to see. waiting for the next big show. But our one stole the spotlight, so quickly did it grow. Maybe if I face the truth, unlock this hidden door, these feelings might ease up, I'd be second place no more. I'm all one, caged inside the